When Steph Curry entered the league back in 2009 as the number 7 overall pick in the draft, no one, I'm sure not even Steph himself, knew that he would have such a massive impact on the game of basketball and forever changing how the game was played. Steph Curry's insane shooting ability with incredible accuracy from well behind the arc changed how kids aspiring to be basketball players viewed the game. If you could somehow perfect the art of shooting from distance and made it the main weapon in your arsenal of basketball skills, you suddenly had an extreme advantage even over the most talented athletes who weren't as gifted shooting it from deep. The evolution of the game being highly predicated on floor spacing and three-point shooting made a shooter's value higher than it's ever been, so much so to the point where the best sharpshooters in the league, doesn't matter if they couldn't play a lick of defense, were getting contract deals as high as some NBA All-Stars, and they can thank the man himself who popularized three-point shooting in today's NBA in Steph Curry. But all of that is about to change as GMs are finally starting to realize that overpaying for one-dimensional sharpshooters is a mistake. If you're new to the channel and enjoy the content, consider subscribing. We are about to hit 5,000 subscribers on the channel. I'm going to be doing a giveaway in which I will give away a jersey of your choosing to one lucky winner, so be sure to subscribe to be entered into that. And I cannot thank you guys enough for the love and support on the channel over these last couple of months. It really does mean a lot to me, and I'll be sure to be putting out more NBA content like this and would appreciate any feedback you have along the way. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. Over the past few seasons, we have seen a number of shooters get massive contracts because of their elite shooting ability. The ability to put points up in a hurry while only taking 2 or 3 dribbles to do so is a weapon that every team would want. Catch and shoot shooters, draw defenses away and double teams away from your superstar players makes even the best defensive teams at a loss for how to stop your offense putting up over 120 points per game. Again, it doesn't matter if these guys are a liability on defense. It doesn't matter if they can't create their own shot and horrible when handling the ball. It doesn't matter that they can't even drive to the basket to put up a layup. When you're shooting above 45% from 3 on high volume, that's all that matters. You are now a threat. The problem is, what happens when the shots stop falling? What happens when teams start going at said shooter on defense and expose their weakness on that end of the floor to the point where the coach is forced to bench them? And then what do you do with their contract once they're no longer able to shoot at a rate for which you signed them? And it's happened a lot in recent years that it surprises me GMs haven't become more wary of it. Here are a few examples of one-dimensional, primarily catch-and-shoot sharpshooters that got huge bags and then completely fell off. Bertans, remember him? Probably not, because he barely plays now. In the 2020 offseason, when Bertans was a free agent, teams were lining up to make offers at him after he started making huge strides in perfecting his shooting, where he shot 42% from 3 on near 9 attempts per game. And coming off the bench, Bertans was so lethal and effective in spreading the floor as a power forward that it enabled Bradley Beal to do what he does best in slashing to the basket and finishing at the rim. And if he was double teamed on his way to the hoop, just a kick out pass over to Bertans. So when Bertans became a free agent, there was no way the Wizards were going to let him go. Hell, I remember really wanting him on the Bulls in that offseason because they needed shooters. They still do, actually. But I wanted him until I saw the contract that the Wizards gave him and said, yeah, they can keep him at that rate. 5 years, $80 million, fully guaranteed, no team or player option. This is for a guy coming off the bench who can't play defense, is a 6'10 power forward who can't rebound, isn't athletic enough to play at the basket and creating a shot. 5 years, $80 million because he can shoot threes at a high clip. Well, wouldn't you know it, that very first season after Bertans got his bag, he started regressing in his three-point shot. His shooting dropped below 40%. His rebounding even went down, which made him somewhat of an ineffective power forward. You can only grab 3 rebounds per game. And his defense somehow got even worse. And then the season after that, even worse. His shooting fell all the way down to 32%. He couldn't do anything else on the court, so his minutes dipped to where he was only averaging 14 minutes a game. And that's when the Wizards decided to ship him and treat him as a sunk cost, trading him to the Dallas Mavericks as salary filler to bring in Kristaps Porzingis. And since being traded to the Mavs, Bertans has been virtually unplayable. Not saying his shot has completely fallen off, although it's nothing like it was in that 2019-20 season that got him that big contract, but he's been so bad at everything else that his three-point shooting, while decent, isn't elite enough to keep him on the court. Dude is averaging 7 minutes per game and basically only launching threes in those limited minutes. The guy still has 2 more years left on his contract after this season, in which he'll be making $60 million a year. That's insane. And the Mavs are stuck with it unless they're willing to ship out a few picks for someone to take on that contract. Another shooter that got paid big time money and then has since gone MIA, Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson was this crazy success story of an undrafted player, had to work his way through the summer league invites, playing in the G League. He eventually gets a two-way contract from the Heat. They convert it to a full-time contract on a minimum deal. And as he's becoming this lights out shooter, shooting 45% on over 8 attempts per game, the league was taking notice. And when he became a free agent, a lot of teams wanted him. So what did the Miami Heat do? They offered him a big contract so that no other team could pry him away. So big that you would have thought Robinson was a borderline all-star. 5 years, $90 million, and what happens? Yeah, his shooting fell off a cliff, and because his defense was so bad, and because he couldn't really do much of anything else outside of just simply catch and shoot, the Heat were forced to put him out of the rotation in the playoffs last season. Robinson is now getting minimal playing time and currently shooting just 30% from 3 on 4 attempts per game, averaging 5.9 points per game. 5.9 points per game for a guy who is getting paid $17 million this season and still has 3 years left on his deal, in which he'll be getting paid all the way through 2026, when he'll be making close to $20 million. Now, you could even argue putting Tyler Hero in this mix, who got that big time extension this offseason, another fairly one-dimensional player, although Hero is capable of doing much more than Duncan Robinson is. He can't play defense, but he is more athletic. He's able to create his own shot. He's able to handle the ball better. His passing is actually improved, so he can be an effective playmaker when he wants to be. So I wouldn't say he's as one-dimensional as someone like Duncan Robinson, but this is yet another player in which you offered a near max deal of 4 years, $130 million for a guy who, if his shot stops falling, which already this season we have seen a dip in his efficiency, then what else does he bring to the table? But Tyler Hero aside, because we'll have to save that for another day based on how he performs over the next few seasons, another shooter that got his bag strictly because of his ability to catch and shoot, the Brooklyn Nets' Joe Harris. And you should notice there is a common theme with all of these players, not including Tyler Hero of course, but all players who weren't high-level recruits coming out of high school, or second-round picks, came into the league at a later age, started out their careers very slow, barely getting any playing time, and then suddenly they started becoming deadly from downtown as the rise of the three-point shooting in the NBA started taking off, and Joe Harris was exceptionally good, even better than the guys like Bertans and Robinson. He led the league in three-point field goal percentage twice, shooting over 47% on over 5 attempts and 6 attempts per game in those respective seasons. Even in Steph Curry's best years, his three-point shooting was never that high. Granted, Steph was putting up much higher volume and also doing other things beside just shooting, you know, like winning MVPs, leading his team to titles, stuff like that. But what Joe Harris was doing was pretty unprecedented for a guy who was never really looked at in the NBA sphere, to this elite level shooter that was a difference maker on the court and opened up the floor for guys like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So in the 2020 offseason, the Nets rewarded Joe Harris with a 4-year, $75 million contract, and despite having a great year in that first year of that deal where he led the league still on three-point shooting, he unfortunately got injured the following season, only played 14 games, and so far this season, while he hasn't been as bad as Bertans and Robinson, he's nowhere near the elite level shooter we once saw, shooting 37% from 3 on 5 attempts per game. His true shooting percentage has fallen dramatically. His overall efficiency rating is a low back to when he first entered the league, and as a result, the Nets have been forced to play him less because, again, he's not really good at doing much of anything else when he's not able to shoot at an elite level. Luckily for the Nets, though, he only has 1 more year left on his deal after this one, where he'll be making $20 million next season. Joe Harris is still better and more of a productive player, at least currently, than Bertans and Robinson are, but it's crazy to think that he'll be making $20 million next season while he's averaging 8 points per game right now. And look, I know some will say, well, look, that happens in the NBA. Every now and then there are going to be players who get bad contracts, or they get paid their market value based on their production at the time of their offer sheet, and then their play falls off when it becomes a bad contract after the fact. There is nothing new about that. The difference, though, is that the market for one-dimensional sharpshooters was set way too high when the league started shifting more toward outside shooting being a focal point of offense. And while these guys are incredibly valuable when their shot is on point, they instantly become a liability when their shots are no longer going down. And it's clear now that after some of these bags got handed out to these guys that I just mentioned, as well as some other guys on a smaller scale, that GMs are no longer going to be willing to shell out big money to guys who can only just shoot. I'm not saying they won't still be valued, they absolutely will, and they will get contracts, but not on the same level as we have seen in recent years. The market value for shooters, because of the uncertainty of how long they will be able to maintain their stroke, because of their inability to do so much of anything else in impacting the game, that market value is going to go down unless you're able to play at least average defense at best, unless you're able to have some sort of athleticism, ball handling, the ability to create your own shot or create plays for others. If you are only just an off-ball catch-and-shoot shooter who can't play defense, you're not going to be getting the same kind of money guys like Duncan Robinson did. Unfortunately, those guys kind of ruined it for you. GMs have learned their lesson not to shell out these big contracts to players with such a limited skill set. At least I would think so anyway. I'm sure there will be some incompetent front office who still give out massive amounts of money to off-ball shooters, but for the most part, the market value for these types of players will never be as high as it has been over the last couple of seasons. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.